with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio and online. It's 6:38.
So, shall we take a look at today's newspapers? And the Metro says, grounded hog day for Rishi. The judges concluded that Rwanda is not safe for Channel migrants to be sent to.
The Mail leads on Rwanda as well. We should decide who comes here, not criminal gangs, their front page says.
And it's very big news for the NHS this morning. The Daily Express are leading with Rishi's radical plan to fix the NHS once and for all.
Blueprint to boost the NHS workforce by 60,000, says the Times.
And does Sir Andy have one more ace up his sleeve? The Telegraph are asking as the double Wimbledon champion warms up ahead of his battle for the big title, because Wimbledon starts this coming week.
OK, let's go through those papers now with the author Nikki Hodgson and co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller. Good to see you both this morning. Let's kick off with the Metro. Nikki, should we grounded hog day for Rishi? Bit of a messy headline.
It is a bit of a messy headline, but the story, which has obviously been covered by lots of the papers this morning, is that the Court of Appeal has found that flights to Rwanda should not take off because basically Rwanda isn't a safe place for migrants to end up. There's a risk that they'll be sent back to countries where they're persecuted for lots of different reasons. So, this has been ongoing for some time. Obviously, there was the first flight attempted to take off last year, was it? And, that was grounded. So, yeah, I mean, the problem for Rishi Sunak is that he had made this one of his pledges, He had said that this was a promise, in fact. He called it one of his 5 promises. It's quite interesting that those promises have now been called priorities. The wording changing there slightly.
But the priority was to stop small boats crossing, not to send people to Rwanda.
No, but the priority was to deal with that issue, and this was the so-called solution. So, I don't really know where he's going to go from here, to be honest, because, does he take another legal challenge? What is being proposed by Suella Braverman is that we come out of the European Convention of Human Rights in order to just ignore the court's ruling. I am very, very against this policy, personally. Lots of people are. The government keeps saying to us it's what the British public want, but actually, at the last YouGov poll done, it was fewer than 40% of people that wanted it, so it isn't what the majority of people want.
But the people want something done about the small boats and the migrant crisis,
don't they? I don't think everybody feels the same about it, Anne. I think some people feel that we have an immigration problem, but I don't think everybody feels as passionate about stopping the boats, because we don't see it. I personally don't see it as a massive problem. I see the cost of living as a massive problem. I see the cuts to,
the cost of keeping illegal migrants in this country before we process them properly, which seems to take a ridiculously long time.
Yeah.
The cost of that impacts us.
But the cost of that is because of the Home Office's backlog of not processing the applications properly, which has been going on for more than 10 years. To be fair to Suella Braverman, she inherited that from Priti Patel, who inherited that from, way back. Theresa May even was having struggles with that. That isn't a new problem.
I think it's interesting because what we see is that I disagree that a lot of people are not concerned with it. If you look around the country, maybe inside London when people are talking, but if you're in the coastal areas and the communities and up and down the country, there are concerns. It's absolutely the case that the Home Office has not been dealing with processing properly. We've got an issue with our public sector and implementing and executing things. I think there's an issue about control, and there's also a discussion, and we don't have control, and the debate about how many and what that means is an important one for everyone. I happen to think often when people come to Britain, they make things better, not worse, but we need to have control, and that's what people want to see. I think the other issue is that when we have legal impediments to political questions, that's a problem, because if you've got pretty much, and I do think there's a lot of support, UK Gov polls are interesting, right, because they often reflect, they're self-selecting in who responds to them. But if you try to stop things legally all the time and you get involved legal, the political question of winning over things and having support from the public gets sidelined into being decided by judges, and I think that's problematic.
But the whole point of having,
judges,
Alan, the whole point of having a separate judiciary to the government is so that the government can't just push anything through. That's what they're there for. They're extremely clever people who go through, documents in minute detail, whereas politicians put forward forward agendas, things that they think will resonate with people.
They do indeed, and that's what's important about politics, winning people over. Maybe not the smart people that they keep telling us,
But,
the
Alan,
legal people.
I actually find it really offensive that you say people around the country feel differently, because I'm from Yorkshire. You know, I know what it's like in Bridlington and how people feel about the boats. They don't all feel the same about it. So, you know, just because what people are upset about is the idea that there's something docked, which looks like basically a shanty town that is going to house people in terrible conditions. And, you know, there might be crime as a result of it because it's not a nice place for people to live.
People aren't happy about the numbers of people coming over.
Some people, that's all I'm saying, some people.
Well, it's only a couple of years ago that number was you know, very, very small. Now it's, I mean, I don't know, 30,000 a year or whatever. And
sure, but the government is using it as a smokescreen for the poverty they have created in this country.
Isn't there a point to the Daily Mail front page there? We should decide who comes here, not criminal gangs. And at the moment, it is the criminal gangs.
But you've got criminals operating in all sectors of life, you know, deciding all kinds of things, like the state of drugs in you know, schools. Everything in this country that is bad for people is decided by criminal gangs.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we shouldn't do something about it.
Of course it doesn't, Anne, but what I'm saying is the government is getting off the hook for their problems they have created with the cost of living and the state of people's lives in Britain by using this as something we should all get really upset about. Well, what we should really get upset about is how they have mismanaged the country for more than 10 years.
I think it's binary. I think you can have a discussion about the problems of executing things in the public sector and the private sector, and you can say that you've got concerns about control over the borders. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. The point about the legal bars, and it's also similar, we're seeing it on a range of things like the Privilege Committee and in the civil service, is that there seems to be a constant attempt for unelected representatives to limit and stifle what elected representatives done. And people may not like certain things, but the point is that if you win it to the public debate, not necessarily by legal brilliant minds, but politics, that is the most democratic thing.
Okay, well, look, I'm sure you've got a view on that. GBViews at gbnews.com. You'll have a view on this as well. The Telegraph, Alan, looking at the NHS reform, biggest in its history, it's claimed. It's going to cost a lot of money, but save as well, apparently, 10 billion quid.
Yes, well, this is in light of 75th anniversary that's coming up now since 1948, and is lauded as, 2.4 billion investment, several hundred thousand being brought in, hopefully. Over 5 years, we'll see a range of things, including a kind of apprenticeships and also reduced time in study from 5 years to 4 years. So a whole array when we've seen a quite problematic and embarrassing situation for Rishi, which was presented as a safe set of hands only just recently, not actually elected into the position, but kind of pushed in by other peers around him, and seemed like it was very straightforward, his proposals, and then they have all coming back to haunt him, whether it's on inflation and other issues. This question about the NHS is front and centre for everyone in Britain. 7.4 million people on the waiting lists, and backlogs with hundreds of thousands of operations not happening. We all know what's going on as well with GPs. And in the care sector, which we should remember, 40,000 care workers were lost due to the vaccine mandate, which still has not got resolved. This seems like it's a very ambitious plan to address it, but at the same time, the question of implementation and execution is also there. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, on that note,